Welcome back to another episode of Rebel Driver's Garage. I am working on my 1976 El Camino Classic. Part of buying a new old car, like a 50-year-old car like this El Camino, is finding out what the hell did you just buy. I mean, did you really investigate it? Well, I have to be honest with you, I really didn't do a lot. It belonged to a friend of mine. I've seen it before, but not really paid attention to the details. Well, now it's in my garage, I'm starting to pay attention to the details. There's some very interesting things about this car I want to show you. First of all, this car is not originally from Nebraska. It's actually from Missouri, or it spent some time in Missouri, at least in the 70s or 80s. Because this is in Missouri. Inspection detail, like the only year I could see is 1985. Now, when I went to register it at the local DMV here in Nebraska, I noticed that the VIN number on the dashboard didn't match what was on the title. So there was all this hullabaloo on what was going on. And the honest to God truth is that somewhere back in a previous owner, they transferred the title number from one person to another, and they got a letter. They changed a letter to a number, so it was like it was supposed to be like a K, but it ended up being a 3 or something. And that was the only number that was messed up. But they had to go back and do a search on the title on this car, and I found out that this car came from California in 1993 to Nebraska. So it went from Missouri to California somewhere in its life, which probably explains why it wasn't super rusted. And during that time, it came back, and then it went through at least 12 owners. They stopped counting at 12 over the 21 years. So how this car hasn't been butchered to death and end up in a junkyard is beyond me. So it just must have gone from one person to another person just as a driver, but it only has like 105,000 miles on it, and or somewhere near there, because the speedometer's not working right now. So there are other signs like wear and tear. Like if this had like 220,000 miles on it, would the door panels be that nice? I mean, sure, the seat's got wear on it, but this is a 50-year-old car, and this is the original seat. It looks like it was never recovered because it matches the door panels. I mean, the dashboard shows like it was in Southern California. I mean, that's typical dashboard for California cars, cooked and burned. But if you look at the brake pedal here, usually cars that got over 150,000 miles, you can actually start seeing the metal on the brake pedal. They actually get so wore through that they have metal on it. There are some things I did notice, because I know that this hole in the carpet was here, and that's from, I noticed when it rained there's some water running down, and it's starting to get a little bit of pinholes here and there, as you can see. I vacuumed out the car just because I can't stand in dirty interiors, and to see what take stock of what I have. The carpet is shot, obviously, but it's usable for right now. Behind the seat, hang on, let me get some light. So, as we're looking in the back here, this is behind the driver's seat, and the cubby hole is still here and intact, though it is starting to split. You can see it over there. You can see my gauges, which I'm going to install later on in this video. But underneath the carpet here is actually pretty good with what I could pull back to. As you can see there, it's all pretty good. Now let me go around to the other side. I did find some issues on the other side. Okay, let me tilt the seat. Okay, so on this side, I started vacuuming back here, and I noticed that there is, I vacuumed, and I found that little hole coming. Basically, I vacuumed the hole. I pulled metal off, and I got this hole here in the floorboard, and I don't know how much more worse it is, but I'm gonna get underneath the car here in a little bit. But this is all kind of corroded and starting to go, but it's still hard, so it's probably still usable. I might just have to wire brush it and PUR15 it. Everything else looks pretty good over here. I don't see evidence of a lot of water running down underneath from the window, except for, you know, the carpet. Maybe that's just from heat and the glue is failing. But what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to end up pulling this all off, and I'll probably just put like, you know, like a Dynamat or something similar along the wall there above, which back here and down all the way down to insulate it, because you know, this is outside. This metal here, that's the bed. That's the front wall of the bed, and that will get really cold when it gets really cold outside. So your heater has to overcome that. So helping insulate that, and also cuts down on road noise. So there was other things I got to figure out too. I mean, the carpet on the passenger side looks pretty good, except it's actually starting to rip here. See that? And I was kind of curious. I was like, well, a lot of these cars had, in this era, let me back the camera up, had the build sheet underneath the carpet over the tunnel. And the problem with a lot of that is that they stuck it underneath this stuff. And if it's underneath this, it's pretty good that it's completely shot. So the car came with factory air shocks. Can you believe that? And it came with the original owner's manual. There's a previous registration in here. And the owner's manual has not been chewed on by the mice. Isn't that cool? That's kind of nice to have, though it's, I mean, not that it'll be anything necessary for me to use. There was a couple other things I did find. There's a tag on the differential that says it's has a factory posi unit as well, and the factory air shocks, though the shocks I saw when I looked underneath the car are white, which I don't know. Kind of reminds me of the old Gabriel hijackers. So I already have a tach installed. It came with the car, but as I said earlier, it's not wired up yet. I'm not even sure if it works. But I got these gauges. These are like O'Reilly Specials, Equus, I think. And they kind of match the tach. So, and right where they're mounted right now, I can see them sitting there driving. All the wiring is going to go up behind between this piece here, this crotch vent thing, which the piece is missing here. It's actually in the, I have it. They took it out, I guess, when they sold the car and took the radio out of the car. But all the wiring and all that's going to tuck up right behind this part of the dash and this part, because there's like a space between the two, just wide enough for all that, which is cool. And then I found the speedometer cable goes in behind the gas pedal bracket there with a big grommet. So I'm going to put like the temperature sending unit and such through there, and the oil pressure line through there. But I got to get the gas pedal off the floorboard first. Oh yeah, I'm also going to put the stereo in right now too, into the dash, because I just bought this year. I bought a, what is this, Pioneer. It's a CD player, but I only bought it because it has Bluetooth, because I don't use CDs anymore. I finally got within the times. So I'm going to mount that, and then I can wire all this stuff up. The gauges, the tach, and the radio all at the same time. Okay, I got the stereo in the dash. Since it was already cut out for one of these style stereos, I just got one for it. And not that I would buy one of those custom auto sound pieces of crap anyways, but anyway, this is it's in now. It's the reason why I'm having all this done right now is because I'm going to wire it all at once. So like the grounds for the lights, and the tach and the radio are all going to be at the same place, which is right here. I found a place right behind the dashboard here. It's like a bracket right about there. And I can pull a bolt out and then put the ground to there for all those. And then the lights for the tach and the gauges I'm going to run to the lamps, which has a terminal there next to the lamp fuse, and they'll come on with the gate with the lights. So, and then the radio, I always wire my radios so they come, it just runs off the battery. Reason being is I like to listen to the radio with the key off and nothing else on. So, you know, you can't, half the time you can't even get these keys to go back to accessory. You know, you're fighting with them, or you have to leave it with the key on, which means the ignition's on. So I just wire it to the battery. And then, you know, how do you forget to turn that off? Because you can't hear it. Anyway, that's the way I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to start running, I got to run the wire that goes to the tachometer to the distributor, power and lights and ground. Same with that. This is a voltage gauge, so I got to run a power wire to the voltage gauge as well, so it reads. Alrighty, so I got the gauges hooked up. You can see right there. I turn the key on, and the voltage reads 13 volts, and the tachometer is kind of jumping, so that's got me hope. This is the green wire that's going to run to the distributor, and the hose for the oil pressure gauge, and the sensor for the temp sensor, which I haven't got into the engines yet. I got to go through the firewall. The gauges are also hooked up to the lights. See that? So is the tachometer. Cool. What else? Oh yeah, the radio. Radio comes on. This is just turns on the clock and the light with this button here on these Pioneers, which I kind of like. That way you can have the clock on without having the radio on. The radio source button's up here, and I'm going to turn it. I'm not going to keep it on because the speakers aren't connected, and it's not good for that. So in order to put in the oil pressure gauge, I got to remove the oil pressure sending unit. You can see it back there. Normally, you can buy a specific socket for this, like this one here, that's designed for that funky shape. Now, you wonder what the world is coming to when it says on the socket, warning, do not use while the engine is running. So somewhere out there in the world, somebody decided to remove the oil pressure sending unit while the engine was running, and probably got a face full of oil from the geyser that happened. Even if he had only 20 pounds of pressure, he still would have had a face full of oil. And probably oil shooting straight up to the ceiling and all over everywhere. Yeah. The fact that there are people out there, and if that's you, I don't even know what to say, but I can't. Okay, you just the other thing you can do is, since that's under the distributor, which is really inconvenient when you have an HEI, you can actually use these when you have like a regular size distributor, like an old points distributor. The other thing you can do is use a 1 inch and 1/16 wrench, and somebody had just recently replaced this sending unit. I know because my friend did, and I'm pretty sure this is what he used to get it in, or a big crescent wrench. But you can just see me turning it in there, and of course wants to focus on other stuff. But you just kind of wedge it in there like that and get it moving. See, it's already coming loose. So he must not have been able to get it really tight. And I'll stick my arm in there if it'll fit. Focus on that. There we go. As you can see, it's brand spanking new. Look at that, it's coming right out. Right on out of there. Now, of course, getting the new stuff in is going to be a joy. Whoops. Oh, that's all right. It didn't go to the bottom of the end. It didn't fall on the ground because there's too much grease back here. It just kind of caught it. So, there. That's your temp sending unit, oil pressure sending unit for non-gauge car. We'll just set that aside in case we need it in another lifetime. I have decided to run the wire for through that hole there, which has that rubber doohickey, and that is for the speedometer cable. And if you can look at there, right behind it is a piece of metal, and that is the bracket for the gas pedal. So I'm going to take the gas pedal off the floor in order to get everything past it easier, and then put it back on. So here we are underneath here. I just got to get those 3/8 screws out, and then I can pass the temperature sending unit, the oh my god, your car is going to catch on fire plastic oil line, and the green wire that goes to the tachometer side of the HEI through that wall and through that firewall grommet, and then attach everything on the engine side, and then I'll put the gas pedal back on. Oh, I have the green wire connected to the tach side of the distributor. I have the oil pressure line installed where the oil pressure centering unit used to be. And now I'm about to take out the stock temperature sending unit there and replace it with the temperature gauge, which I have kind of ready here. See, I have it ready to go in, because as soon as I pull this out, it's going to be a gusher. And I'm going to try to get this new one in rather quickly in order to eliminate as much of a mess as humanly possible. We'll see how it goes. Of course, the fitting is right above the cross member, which means the water is going to go that way and that way, and it's just going to make a big mess. I got my big drain pan under the underneath the cross member, hoping to catch it from going both ways, but I know I'm going to end up with a lake underneath my car. So you see how I got both of these like right next to each other? So wish me luck here. Oh, there it goes. Oh wow. That wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So this is a 5/8 going into there. It's still dripping. And it's running off in every direction, of course. I might attempt to get a 7/8 wrench in there, but I don't think it's going to work too good. I was able to turn it, the big adapter, which is 7/8 of an inch going in. This is a 1/2 inch MPT going in the side of the head, and then I'm kind of tightening both the smaller one that goes in, which is 3/8, and then the adapter is a 1/2 inch. I'm kind of tightening both with that because I knew I wouldn't be able to get a wrench very well all the way back in there on the adapter. So anyway, that wasn't as big a mess as I thought it would be, but it's still a mess. Burning some of that antifreeze off the exhaust. It doesn't look like the oil pressure sending unit is leaking. Now there is a big oil puddle underneath the car. So we have a success. I'm not going to leave it running long enough with the garage door closed. As you can see, the car back here doesn't look like the rear end cover's been off the car in quite some time. The bolts don't look like they've been disturbed, but it does have the limited slip tag on it still. I want to see if there actually is a limited slip in this and what gear ratio it is. So bear with me while I get this all apart. Okay, you can see it's draining out. It does smell old. What I did on this stuff to keep from making a big mess is I take out 9 of the 10 bolts. I leave in one up at the top, and I take my screwdriver and I just pry it off, pry it out, and you can see, because you know what happens when you start prying on these things, it always happens, is that the cover falls off, lands in the oil, and you get a mouthful of 50-year-old gear oil. As you can tell, this stuff's been in here a while. And it's not horrible. It doesn't smell absolutely horrid either, which is nice. So what I'm going to do is let that drain for a minute, and then I'm going to take that last bolt out and hopefully not make a mess. You can see the springs in there, makes it is a posi. And I don't know if you can read this very well. If the camera will focus in on it, it says, if you want to know what gear ratios you have, it says right on the ring gear here, and there's 2 numbers with a colon. It's 15 and 41. Oh, there it is, 15 and 41. That's your gear, that tells you. So it's 15 teeth on the pinion and 41 teeth on the ring gear. Oops. And we do a little math, and so 15 divided by 41 is 273 gears, which is what I suspected for 1976 highway cruiser. So while it doesn't make it a hot rod on the street light to street light, it will mean I don't have to put a 700 R4 or something in it in order to go down the highway and get decent mileage. I'd have preferred something a little more like 308s. But hey, I am not complaining one bit. So everything looks good. I mean, it's in really nice shape. So I guess I'll just button it all back up, put new fluid in it. So I've been scraping off the remnants of the insulation carpet back here. I've been doing this for a little bit now, not a whole lot. To help, I bought this stuff from 3M, general purpose adhesive cleaner. I guess it's similar to the general purpose adhesive remover. I couldn't find that locally, but they had this at the local O'Reilly, so I bought it. And it's doing a pretty good job of helping me get this garbage off. Some of this stuff, I really don't know what kind of glue that GM used, but I mean, it's like rock. Yeah, so, but I'm trying to get this cleaned off because I'm going to put like a heat insulation stuff on it. And this is what I'm using. 3M sound deadening pads. That's the part number there. But this is we use this at work a lot, and you can get it. I can get this. I got this at Arnold Motor Supply. They stock this stuff. It is not cheap. There's 10 sheets in here. Each sheet is in millimeters, which I don't know. 500 by 500 millimeters. So it looks like to be about 2 foot square almost, or maybe 22 inches. And there's 10 sheets in here. This package here was like a little over $100. It's not inexpensive, that's for sure, but it's not like Dynamat. As you can see, I got the thing scraped off. It took about an hour to scrape all the rest of that carpet crap off, and then And then I put this sound deadener on. This is that 3M stuff I was showing you earlier. And it's like a decal. You just peel and stick, push it down everywhere. Make sure it's got good adhesion. And it should keep it from rattling. Yeah. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add carpet to it as well. I'll probably glue carpet over the top of it as well to give it a little better look. I've been driving the car for a couple of weeks now, and the new lid gasket stopped it from leaking from the top, but I started seeing fluid coming out of the bottom. Yeah, that's not good. So I ended up having to buy a master cylinder anyway, so I'm going to change it. Alright, this is an O'Reilly Special master cylinder, and we're going to bench bleed it. I moved it to the other side. You can see it came with these plugs instead of a hose type of bleeders. And the reason what they do is they do it a little bit different, bleeding this type of master cylinder for some reason, is that you plug it and then you look for bubbles coming out of the top instead of bubbles coming up out of the clear plastic hoses that they often include with this. It is also different that you do not try to push a full stroke all the way to the back, right, to get the bubbles out. With it plugged, you're only stroking it about an inch. And it should get harder as you get the airs out of it, to the point where you can only push it about 1/8 of an inch before it wants to stop altogether. And I kind of like it this way because it seems to work a little faster. I did overfill the back one a little bit doing this, but that's okay. As you can see, it's just shooting fluid out of the front, and it's no longer able to go farther than basically 1/8 of an inch, so it's done bleeding. I like this way a little better, to be honest with you. So I can put this one on as soon as I get the old one off. So if there's anything you want to invest in, really good ones are line wrenches. These are actually snap-on. I usually don't like to buy snap-on stuff because, wait, let's face it, they're pretty pricey. But when it comes to line wrenches, I've had lower priced ones from Craftsman and a few other people, and let's just face it, they're a waste of money. So I decided to spend the big bucks and get these because they actually work and they don't strip. When you ever have one of these strip, then you know it's bad news. Even with a good line, even when you spend money on a line wrench. The thing is, the other thing I'm going to do is try to get these off without twisting or breaking the lines. As you can see, these lines look really nice. And this master cylinder has obviously been, I guess, replaced over the years because somebody actually painted it silver at one point. But let's see if we can get it to go. And what you want to watch when you're turning this is to make sure that the tube, the brake line tube, is not turning with the nut. And which I'm kind of lucky here. A lot of the vehicles I've worked on, it's been not so good. See how it's doing pretty good there? So obviously this has been off once before. Now when I get to the back of the car, where I'm going to be replacing the wheel cylinders later on, that might be a different issue, and I might end up buying new brake lines and having to rebend new brake lines for the rear axle. Somebody replaced the midline between the proportioning valve and in the back of the car at one point. Those often rust over the... Now that I got the brake lines loose, I'm going to unbolt it from the master cylinder here. I mean the brake booster. Pardon me, the brake booster. Now I had this off the other day to confirm it was actually leaking from behind. That's why these are fairly easy to get off now. And then I'm just going to finish taking the brake lines off. Let's grab a regular 9/16 wrench over here. You can see how it's running down the back here. It's leaking out the back here. The seals just got old, that's all. The thing about brake fluid is that if you leave it in your car long enough, it becomes acidic. It becomes acid-like, and it starts eating away at your at the seals and stuff that are in your car. Excuse me. So what happens, you know, like if you ever have like an old car that's sat around forever and you always have to replace the wheel cylinders, that's because the brake fluid in the wheel cylinder becomes acidic, and it basically starts eating away the rubber O-rings and seals and stuff. I'm going to clean that mess up a bit. There we go. Before I tighten this down, I want to leave it a little bit loose. That makes it a little bit easier to get these started and get the threads going on these. Let me get this rag underneath here because this is going to leak. Yep. And makes it easier to kind of move around in order to get the threads started on this thing. This one's being a little bit of a pain. The thing about these brake line fittings and this kind of fittings is you got to have the angle exactly right. Otherwise, it's not going to thread in at all. Let's see if that'll work. And you don't want to force it, especially when your master cylinder is aluminum. So this is why I'm replacing the wheel cylinders as well. I checked this 2 weeks ago and it wasn't leaking, but now I've been driving it every day. It started leaking, which is kind of not surprising after the car had sat for so long and then it started getting driven again. You can see it's all wet there. Those actually look like the original ones of the car. And the shoes are pretty wore down on this for some reason. What got my attention was I was on a gravel road and I hit the brakes pretty hard and the right rear locked up first. And when you get oil contamination in the shoes, they have a tendency to grab faster and earlier than the other side. So taught me to get back underneath there and look again, and I was right. The brake drums looks fine. So we'll replace both wheel cylinders and rebleed the brake system. So I've been working on the car. I'm going to change the intake gaskets, mainly because I got an oil leak that's running down the back of the engine, and I suspect it's the intake gasket because they used the rubber seals, and you can see the rubber end seals that nobody ever uses anymore, and that one is cracked all the way across. So I imagine it's probably cracked across the back and leaking out the back. I have been working with the music on, and so I haven't been filming. But But you can get, I just put, one thing after another, taking it off the engine. Amazingly, to drain the radiator, the original petcock down there actually turned. I thought it was frozen solid on a 50-year-old car, but hey, that was a nice little convenience. As you can see here, I used my dead blow mallet. I rammed a screwdriver in there in between the cylinder head and the intake. It's better to come straight at the front between here to get it loose, and then you just pry it up to get it unstuck from the gaskets. I'm going to need both hands here to pull that because that's an iron intake, and I'm going to need everything I got to get it out. So bear with me. Let's see if I can do this without getting a hernia. This intake's got a nice couple of handholds here. Oh boy, it's still stuck on this end. Or it's actually sticking on the valve cover. I might have to take the valve cover off to get it out. Let's see what we got. Oh, there we go. Trying not to get antifreeze in the oil since I just changed the oil and I don't feel like changing it again, so I'll just stuff a rag in here. Oh lordy, it's heavy. Iron ones are heavy. Oh boy. The lifter valve is pretty clean considering. So, let me show you what we're dealing with here. As you can see, the lifter valve is pretty clean. It's not spotless, but what do you expect on an engine that was built in 1974? So, see how the corner of the gasket down here, I'm going to get this thing to focus. We're in the right spot. Stupid camera. There we go. See how it's this corner of the gasket is folded in and ripped? How it's folded in and ripped here? That's where it was leaking out the back and running down the back of the motor. That's why nobody uses these darn things anymore. Because you set the intake manifold on there, and a cast iron intake manifold is so darn heavy that it'll just cut that rubber seal in half. Alright. As you can see here, here are the two ground straps that go from the back of the firewall, the body to the engine, and they didn't hook them up for some stupid reason. So it had these original style gaskets on it. There's nothing wrong with these when you're running this kind of an engine. But they go in the circular file. And I'm going to take a look down the exhaust ports and see if we have intake ports. See if we can see anything interesting. There's some oil in the cylinders. But I don't see signs of oil running down the valve. There's some oil on top of the valves. I'm going to go around the other side. Yeah, there's oil in the intake ports around the valve, but the oil, there's not a ton of carbon buildup on the valves. And when you look down in there, can you see the valve there? And see where it's at the top of the valve? It's where the guide would come out. There's not oil running down the guide down to the top of the valve. That means that the valve guides are good. Yeah. See if you can see in there. Yeah. So I'm getting oil in the cylinder, and I wonder if it's getting past the valve cover or the intake gasket. Let me look at those intake gaskets again. Now what we're doing is we're looking at the bottom of the intake ports here. Right, that's just water droplets. But you see how there's oil all along the bottom of the port here, the port of the gasket, and all along here. That's oil. So what it's doing, and especially when you decel and there's a lot of vacuum, it'll literally pull oil from the lifter valley past this gasket down the intake manifold, intake ports, and it'll burn it. And you go, oh, I got bad valve guides. Oh, I got this, I got that. Well, I got bad rings. Well, on this engine, it looks like it's burning oil. Look at that. Same thing. Right there. That is oil getting past the gasket going into the intake ports. So the oil is on this side too. The oil was getting past the gaskets and was burning. Now, that's why there's oil in the combustion chamber. Well, not really the combustion chambers, but the chamber around the valve. And the other thing you'll notice is like the bolts here. Chevy intakes, the cylinder heads, you can see the bolts for the bolt holes for the cylinder head for the intake bolts. Well, they're drilled all the way through into the lifter valley by the push rods. And if you don't use thread sealer, well, you get oil that creeps up the valve, and then you have these little puddles of oil on your intake manifold next to your bolts. The only ones that aren't drilled all the way through are the four corner bolts on the end bolts on each cylinder head, so the four outer corners. The other 8 bolts are drilled all the way through. All these bolts here are drilled all the way through, and you need to use thread sealer on them. Some people use RTV, but I've never had that good luck with RTV. See, this was a corner bolt. See how it's dry? But almost all the intake bolts have got oil creepage on them. So what's next is I'm going to clean this all off and put new gaskets on and reinstall the intake manifold after I clean it. And I might paint the intake manifold too. And I might even change these valve covers. Because remember, if you remember the first video, this engine came with chrome Moroso valve covers, old vintage ones. So when I bought the car for my friend, he included those. And I'll get rid of these ugly orange things. This one's on backwards because the oil cap is not supposed to be at the back. I do believe this one is supposed to be over on this side anyways. Yeah. Yeah. So they got them on the wrong side of the engine anyways. So, anyhow, I'm going to put some more rags here in the lifter valley. And start cleaning up the mess. For the most part, I just use a razor blade and a small handheld wire brush. And that will do it. So I cleaned up the intake manifold using a toothbrush and some PB Blaster to get the grease off. Then I hosed it all off with brake clean. And now I'm going to try to find a can of paint in my pile of paint over here. See if I can figure out something to paint this back. I'm not going to, it's cast iron. Paint it Chevy orange to match the engine, or I could paint, it looks like we painted it silver before. Maybe I just cast iron? How about cast iron? I don't know. We'll see. I did pull the valve covers off, and I wanted to see what heads were on it. They are 882s. You see the casting number there. 882s. They're a small gear ahead. A lot of people don't know this, but they have the exact same ports, intake and exhaust ports, as a earlier fuelie head. See, like a 186 casting. What makes them terrible is the combustion chambers being so big and the dish pistons that are underneath of them. Plus, GM wasn't really caring about zero decking. So, if you have a dish piston under a large chamber with, say, a piston that's as much as 40 thousandths below deck, you have zero quench. Zero quench means you really don't have much of anything. You can run 50 degrees of timing in these engines and they don't care. They won't knock and ping. You can run the crappiest gas known to man. They won't care. Because that's what really killed all the power on these engines, is when they did that. Now you can run flat tops on these, zero deck them, and they're a lot better. They're a lot better motor. But you can get the compression back up to like 9.5 to 1 compression. It'd actually be a decent engine. So I painted my intake manifold. It's kind of gloss. Wow, is it bright? This, I found a can in my stuff here. It is, I got it up here above the heater, warming, keeping it warm. It is wheel paint. I had a can of this glossy silver wheel paint. It kind of makes it look like a glossy aluminum intake manifold. Meh, works. I did paint the little head on the heater control valve, but I did tape up the shaft because it actually wired wheeled, basically looking brand new. I did tape up that, and the aluminum water neck is taped up, but I also taped up the vacuum port fitting. So I'm gonna let this dry. Got the heater cranked up. It's about 60 degrees in here now, and let it dry for a few hours, and then I'll come back out here. Here is the intake manifold all ready to go. As you can see, she's all shiny. She'll look really silly on this greasy engine, but what the hell. I apologize that I lost my footage for installing the intake manifold. I might find it still. It's on a new camera that I'm trying out. But I got the intake manifold on. I used new hardware. These are just like Tractor Supply bulk bolts. They're 1.25 inch long, 3/8 coarse thread. And then I got some 1/4 inch bolts for these Moroso vintage valve covers that I have. I found the loom clips for the plug wires, so I'm putting those back on. And got the distributor in. That's about where it was at when it came out at 9 o'clock. And then I'll figure out timing from there. Usually it points a little bit like that. That'll get me started at least. But I'm working out some issues with the carburetor whenever you change carburetors, because this is not the original carburetor to this car. So I need to hook up the downshift dealio here, and I'm gonna have to readjust it as well because it's not pulling. It's way too tight. It needs to be able to go all the way like that. So so right now it's just way too tight, I think. Yeah, we'll figure it out. I might have to do a different clamp here for it to work out. For right now, I can drive a turbo. This is not like a 700R4 where you absolutely have to have your TV cable. This is a turbo 350. You don't, though it won't downshift when you push it to the floor, so something I need to fix. The other side of the valve cover was a fight to get on. So, and I screwed up the gasket putting it on, so I'm going to redo that to this morning. Trying to get it tucked in here. Trying to get it tucked in this way. The rocker arms caught the gasket and peeled it off the bottom of the valve cover, which is probably the same thing that happened before. As you can see, there's red RTV that was on all the rocker arms, so the ends down here. So they probably had the same problem when they changed the valve cover gaskets the last time. And then I need to figure out a way to hook up the fuel line to the carburetor. I found this fuel line, carburetor fuel line in stash, but it's not really bent right. See, it's kind of, I'd have to do something weird like this, which, you know, it's not exactly the end of the world if I do that, but it looked kind of a little strange. But I also bought this little short piece here, and what I would do is do a 90-degree bend or something like that, and then come around and then go towards this. I might need to move the fuel filter someplace else, like between the fuel line and the fuel pump, which is a better place to have it, because then you're not having dirt going through your fuel pump. But, you know, little steps at a time to get it back. Like here, the PCV valve went all the way around the carburetor on the other side of the carburetor with the last carburetor, but it's just going to go to here. So obviously I can shorten that. So I'm just working on little doohickey things, and then this is where I'm getting nickel and dime type stuff done. I somehow killed the battery, so I got that charging. Carburetor is on. All the new hoses are on. Well, actually, I just replaced the heater hoses with stuff I had in stock, which were used, but they were less used than the ones that were on it and less hard. See, now I'm going from a Holly to a quadrijet. I had to do some stuff here, like I added the springs that go in a different direction with that little chrome doohickey there, and then I added belts that I had lying around. I actually had a brand new alternator belt for this, and I had a newer power steering belt, so I used those. I found, when I put the valve covers on, I found my tabs for my plug wires, so they kind of look a little neater now. Like, again, these plug wires were actually on this Impala here at one time, but I wanted to go black. These are MSDs. These are the higher end version of the MSDs, not the Street Fires, whatever the heck you call them. And used them over here as well. There were chrome Morosa valve covers. I had a K&N breather that I used. Started filling it up with the radiator fluid too. Alright, after some weird strange issues, like somehow I had the fuel filter in backwards here, and the battery cable suddenly wasn't working for the negative side, and somehow it killed the battery, having the this disconnected from the engine. It just kind of killed the battery, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it was just barely enough of a ground to cause a drain. I had it on the charger, and then so now let's see. I got it pretty close to starting up. Oh yeah, that's much better. I got the timing like set at like 16 degrees, which on a low compression engine like this is no problem. take it right now, since I don't have a choke stove on this intake manifold, and it is winter. I think I'll leave it like that. So here are my new tires and wheels for the back of the car. Much better real tires, 275/60/15s on the back of the car. And I still need to get the front tires, which are on the back of a car on my friend's farm. Yeah, I need to get those. Well, I just took it for a test drive, and the belt was squealing pretty badly all over the place. I guess I didn't get it anywhere near tight enough. So I just did that, fixed that, and it sounds great. The car is running great. You can see the hole in the door there. That is because I got the door locks out, because the keys that came with the car do not unlock the doors. So I'm going to take them down to the locksmith and have them rekeyed. Other than that, I got the door locks to work. See, I got this door lock button here, and I got them working. Look at that. But they don't talk to each other. That one over there where it runs that door. So here's this door here. But it doesn't talk, unlock that door or do anything with that door. So somewhere underneath the dash there, the wires are unplugged. They're supposed to be talked to each other. So there's got to be a plug that's undone somewhere behind the dashboard to connect them both together. That way you hit that door lock, it locks both doors. Well, in the meantime, I got to get the door locks fixed anyways. So, not too bad. Even with the wheels and tires that I got in it, well, I already had the front tires, and I purchased the back tires. That was the big expense there. That was like $450 for the two back tires on the two back wheels and the lug nuts. I still have less than $2,500 in this car. That's pretty good for a daily driver now. Now they've got the quadrijet on there. It doesn't look like it's leaking everywhere. I fancied it up with some valve covers and stuff that came with the car. And the chrome air cleaner came with the car. So I'm going to be driving it around. I'm going to do some other things to it, but we'll see what happens. Maybe some headers and dual exhaust, but I got to modify the transmission cross member because it's a single exhaust style, because this one had a catalytic converter originally, and it's got a test pipe in place of it for some reason. Anyway, I'll maybe do a dual exhaust and headers on this and see what happens. But if you like this vehicle, if you like this car, if you like this video content, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please ask. I'm happy to answer questions. Thanks for watching.